with the newest Dreamworks animation film out in theaters, The Bad Guys. Today I'll be giving you guys my tier list for all of the Dreamworks animation films. So let's get started. How's it going, movie watchers? Thank you guys for stopping by my channel. Today we're on tiermaker.com and we're going to be ranking the Dreamworks animation films from Antz all the way to The Bad Guys. This list that I did find on Tiermaker does not include Joseph, King of Dreams, since that is a direct home video film. They just didn't include it on this list, and I don't want to make a brand new one. So it does include the newest one, The Bad Guys, and some most recent ones like Boss Baby and Spirit and Croods New Age and Trolls. So some of the most recent ones, but we'll start with obviously the Antz is the first one. S are the best of the best. A are great films. B are good films. C are okay films. And D are the bad films. So leave your tier list down below. What is your favorite Dreamworks animation films? Because there are some really good ones in here. What's your least favorite one? Because there are some bad ones in here as well. We're going to start just with the first one, and then this looks like it's in order of release, and so we'll leave the last one for The Bad Guys. So we'll start with Antz. Antz, first off, is going to go into the B category. It's a good film. I think that not a lot of people paid much attention to it because it came out around the same time as a Bug's Life. Bug's Life being Pixar. This is like a new company, and it's not the best looking film. It does not hold up to today. At times it does drag and a little dull at times, but I think there's some good intention behind this film. There are some likable characters. The story is entertaining enough to warrant more than one watch, but when I think of Dreamworks animation films, it's not the most memorable one. I think that's also due to the fact of its animation. They started to kind of experiment with other forms of animation with like Prince of Egypt we see here in Dorado, working with Aardman for Chicken Run, and then going to Shrek, and then back to like the hand-drawn animation for Simbad and Spirit. So it's kind of, they were like testing things out, and we kind of see that within Antz. But nonetheless, I think it's an enjoyable film. Not the best, but I think that it was a solid start to the company. Next up is The Prince of Egypt. That's going to go straight up here to the A. That's a great film. There's a lot of powerful music in there. A really impactful story that feels very important. It's really focused on its story rather than look at like B-movie and Shark Tale and Shrek. They rely on some humor to tell their story. Prince of Egypt is the complete opposite. It's their most dramatic story that they've ever done, and it's the most powerful one they've done too. So Prince of Egypt has always been one that I've enjoyed. It took me some time to actually sit down and really appreciate it. I remember having the VHS for it, never really paying attention to it as a kid, but as an adult, I really understand why it's regarded as one of their best. Next up, The Road to El Dorado. I know I may lose you. This is an okay film. I just don't care much for it. It's got a bit of a generic plot, but it really relies on its likable characters. They make the movie fun to watch. It's not the best movie ever, but it's not the worst one. I just think it's okay. It drags a little bit at times. It's a bit generic, but the two characters in here, I think the voice acting here does provide a lot of fun within it to make them fun characters to watch. Despite that kind of generic plot that's going on. It's visually a good film. Like I said, Dreamworks was kind of experimenting with different animation styles and figuring out what works for them. So this was kind of in the middle of that testing phase for them. But it's a good looking film. Next up, we got Chicken Run. Chicken Run is going to go in the the B category, I also have a list here off to the side so I don't forget. The B category, Chicken Run's fun. It's zany at times, working with Aardman. It's going to look different than your average DreamWorks animation film like Shrek or B movie or Kung Fu Panda. I like when Aardman works with DreamWorks animation. I think that it's a quirky, fun story that's a little haunting at times when you really look at what the story is about. But it's a bit urgent and personal too. It's just a really zany, fun film that's staple to Aardman when you think of all the films they've worked on. Next up, we got Shrek. This is straight up to the top there. Shrek is easily one of the best films that they have done. One of the best animated films too. It has so many fun moments in here. Very quotable moments. Shrek and Donkey have a solid relationship. Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy are perfect in the role with Cameron Diaz as well. They just have a relationship that starts off a bit rocky and then they start to understand each other. It's got some fun adventure moments as well. Tries to incorporate that fairy tale story within it while also being something different. It feels very unique for the time that it was released. The animation works for it and the characters are just a blast. This is such a good film. Next up, we got Spirit. Spirit is a good film. Spirit is quite simple. They have done its beautiful animation, the narration by Matt Damon, at times a little cheesy, but I think it does work for what this film is. It's very calm, it's very relaxing, it's beautiful to look at. It's just an overall really solid film. Next up, we got Simbad. Simbad, I feel like Simbad and El Dorado, I kind of like the same feeling for them. There's really fun characters within both of the films. The villain is kind of weak within here, and the story is just a little bit generic. It's got a fun adventure feel to it. It's not a film that I find truly memorable or worth wanting to watch over and over again. Despite some fun moments in there and some fun characters, it's just kind of a bland movie to me. And I know that a lot of people really like these two films, but I don't know. I spent a lot of time watching Shrek growing up that I never really paid attention to some of these earlier films. Next up, we got Shrek 2, one of the best, honestly, animated sequels ever. It really expands on that first film while giving us so many new fun characters. Just building on the world of Shrek and all the fairy tale creatures. Donkey and Shrek still have a fun but complicated relationship. Seeing the true side of Fiona and her family was worth a watch, and a really good soundtrack as well. Shrek 2 is just absolutely hilarious, and I can easily see why people put Shrek 2 over Shrek 1. It's just an iconic sequel. Next up, we got Shark Tale. Shark Tale, this was an easy choice. It's one of the worst DreamWorks animation films. There's nothing funny about this film. The animation is bad. They just focus on trying to make the characters look like their voice actors with Martin Scorsese and Will Smith, Jack Black. It's just an odd film that has so many weird moments that just really don't make sense. The humor is not there. There's no heart to it. There's no humor to it. It's absolutely dull. I've never cared about Shark Tale. Next up, we got Madagascar. Madagascar is going to go to the A category. I think it's got a fun group of characters, all different in their own ways, different voice acting, but that's what makes it work, is you really do feel that bond. And it is tested in Madagascar, is they're in a different environment, and they reacted in the way that they didn't hope to. They thought they would be in Madagascar and everything would be perfect for them, and they would still remain friends. They are friends, but it was a challenge for them. I think that's an appropriate way to tell the story, is that they're in a whole different environment. They're going to act a little bit different, their true nature. And I think it's a fun story with a lot of zany minor characters like King Julian. But all of the characters in here have that strong bond. There's a lot of funny humor. The penguins in here are absolutely hilarious. There's enough in here that makes Madagascar not their like deep film, but it is one of their more entertaining films. Next up, we have Wallace and Gromit. Wallace and Gromit is a good film. I love their, like I said, their time with Aardman, Chicken Run, Wallace and Gromit, and Flushed Away down here. But it's a fun film. I always like Wallace and Gromit. I think they have just such a adorable relationship. It's got a fun plot as well. Enough moments between the two to make them memorable in the film. And they just work well with the plot. There is great animation from Aardman in here. There's really nothing much to complain about. It's not their most entertaining piece with Aardman, but it's still, for what it is, an enjoyable film with Wallace and Gromit. Next up, Over the Hedge. This is another good film. I watched this one a lot when it was released. I would say like the Shrek films and Madagascar and Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. Over the Hedge is one I've watched a lot. I always liked Steve Carell's character in here. It was just absolutely crazy. Bruce Willis in here is entertaining as well. It's got a pretty predictable plot. It's kind of been seen before, but what makes this film work is the differences between the animals and the humans and their battle as well, and their end goal in mind is kind of what's moving the story forward. But as Bruce Willis is kind of manipulating the other animals and getting them to do what he wants, they also form a relationship that becomes a little bit endearing at times. It's got some really over-the-top moments, some fun animation. It's just a really simple, enjoyable film. Next up, we got Flushed Away. This one goes to the B category. It's a good film. I think that it's got some fun villains in here, some likable characters, and some fun action. Definitely explores the world in the sewers quite well. And there's a lot they have to do with the animation, especially with being in the sewers, and so many big moments within here, a lot of action scenes, and I think that Aardman and Dreamworks really handled them well. But with those likable characters and that great celebrity voice cast in here, makes Flushed Away one of their better projects between Aardman and Dreamworks. Next up, we got Shrek the Third. Man, I was so disappointed with Shrek the Third after the highs of Shrek and Shrek 2. I remember getting Shrek the Third on DVD for Christmas and being completely disappointed with it. It was nowhere near Shrek 2. It's an okay film. I think the plot is really boring. I do not like Justin Timberlake's character at all. It really doesn't give Shrek a chance to be like the center of it all, since it is focused a lot on Justin Timberlake's character. I think they took away from the relationships that were really nicely built between Shrek, Donkey, and Fiona in the first and second film. Kind of takes it away in the third film, and I just don't really like Justin Timberlake's character. It's not as funny or charming as the first two, and easily I think the worst Shrek film. Next up, B movie. I hate B movie. It is so stupid. And I know that it's become like it's cool to really like B movie, and it's like the most important piece in cinema. It's bad. The story makes absolute no sense. There's no humor. It is beyond ridiculous to the point where I just cannot enjoy B movie. Moving on. Kung Fu Panda. I think Kung Fu Panda is a great film. When I first watched it, I would have put it down here into like these two categories, but as time has passed, I really have grown to appreciate this film. I think Po is a very determined character. He does not fit in. That's where the development lies, is that he works hard in the film and never gives up, and you see that determination and that growth in here. Jack Black is absolutely hilarious as Po. There is some great animation, some great action scenes, but as he's discovering more about himself, that is where the heart of the film is, and it makes it for one of the more iconic DreamWorks characters. Next up, we got Madagascar 2. It's a good film. It's not as good as the first film. the plot, I think of all three of them, is the least entertaining one. But this is a chance for the characters to grow individually as they get to Africa, and they kind of go off on their own and they explore different things on their own. It's a chance for them to grow independently and also realize how much you miss them as a group. But I think the plot works well for individually, but as a group, not as much. But there are some good moments, like when Alex has learned about his family. There's some heartwarming moments within the film, but when you compare all three of them, I think it's the least entertaining one. Next up, we got Monsters vs. Aliens. This is an okay film. This film relies too much on its humor. It's not really focused too much on the story, and it overall feels completely bare. There is some fun action and some fun animation and really odd characters, but for the most part, it's just a movie that's just there. How to Train Your Dragon. This is an amazing film. It goes right up there to the top. The relationship between Toothless and Hiccup is very sweet. The film doesn't just give you those moments of them having that sweet relationship. They have to work towards it, and that's what makes the ends and the second and third films so great, is that they built up that relationship in a very nice way. The relationship is challenging and that growth is felt. It's got a great score. The animation is great. Very likable characters. A really important message as well. How to Train Your Dragon is simply one of the best animated films ever. Shrek Forever After. I think it's an okay film. It's better than the third film, but it's so weird, and it's a film that you watch it, and I think their goal is to make you miss Shrek and miss the relationship. So when you're watching it, you're realizing how good the first and second film is. So you're not really focused on that fourth film. You're supposed to be focused on the past and what made those first two films so great. And I guess the relationships as well. Fiona and Donkey and Puss in Boots, and what they meant to Shrek. That's really what Shrek Forever After is how important the first two and the third film are to Shrek and everything that happened within that film. But Shrek Forever After has some fun moments, some odd characters, different storylines, different situation for all the characters as he's like wanting a different life. But once the film wraps up, it's not really satisfying. It just kind of wraps up and you're like, okay, it's over, and so the Shrek franchise is over, and now he realizes how much he's missed everything. So it's just it's odd film, but it's definitely better than the third film. Next up, we have Megamind. It's a good film. I think it's got some funny, quirky moments, some really good superhero feel within it, and some villains as well. Will Ferrell and Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill. It's got some great voice acting in here. Next up, we got Kung Fu Panda 2. I think it's a great film. What I like about the sequels for Kung Fu Panda is that Po is still discovering something new. And he's not a master at everything. He's got a fun villain in here, and he's still up to the task. There's still a lot of growth for the second and third film, and they still managed to make things feel fresh. And that's what I really did appreciate about the Kung Fu Panda sequels, is how it still managed to do something new while also feeling very similar. Next up, we got Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots is a good film. I really liked Puss in Boots when he was introduced in the second Shrek, and I'm actually looking forward to the new Puss in Boots film. I think coming out in September, but it's got a fun story. Zach Galifianakis in here is absolutely hilarious. There's some fun action scenes, cute, adorable moments from other cats within here, and it's a plot that I think that does match the storylines for like Shrek. That kind of fantasy feel to it, that fairy tale feel, but also works for Puss in Boots as he's fearless and he gets involved with a lot of those action scenes. So it's got some humor, it's got some action. Overall, it's just a really good film. Next up, we got Madagascar 3. I think it's a good film. It's a really zany film, I think, of all three of them, especially at the beginning of the film. And then all of the circus moments and the circus afro. It's just got so many bizarre moments when you think of the first two films. It's one that's a little bit over the top and hard to take in at times with how much they are offering, but the characters still all feel the same. They're all really enjoyable, even if the plot is a little bit weird and doesn't make too much sense. It's still an enjoyable film. Next up, we got Rise of the Guardians. I think it's an okay film. I know a lot of people really like it. They love Jack Frost in here, voiced by Chris Pine, but it's just it's okay. It's just kind of bland. The characters aren't that exciting. There is some fun action within here, but it's a film that I saw in theaters and I immediately forgot about it. I've seen it a few times since its release. I tried to kind of at least revisit a few of these films before doing like a tier list like this, and I have revisited Rise of the Guardians. It's a fun film that feels different from all of their films. It's a nice film that explores these legends and myths, but it's kind of got like that like Avengers feel to it, bringing in Santa and Jack Frost and all of the other big legendary characters and everything. But the villain in here is kind of weak, and there's just not that many exciting moments for me. I know a lot of people like it, but it's just kind of a forgettable film. Croods, that's a good film. It's just got that really over the top feel to it. The story isn't very strong though, but the movie relies on its family to tell the story. It almost kind of feels like a Saturday morning like cartoon. There's not much of a developing story. It's more focused on like that slapstick humor and the characters reacting to certain things that are going on. Guy, when he's introduced, voiced by Ryan Reynolds, how are they reacting to everything? There's just a lot of zany action scenes going on with a little downtime in between scenes to tell a developing story. That family bond is there. The story is more focused on the family and sticking together. And like Emma Stone's character, she wants to go off and do her own thing. Nicolas Cage's character wants to keep his family close together. That bond is slowly starting to fall apart, but the really fun moments in here make this worth watching. Turbo, it's an okay film. I easily could put this in the bad, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in the okay, the C section up here. I like Ryan Reynolds in here, and it's got at least a like cheering moment towards the end. But other than that, there's not much I can say about Turbo that really amazed me, besides maybe a couple scenes here and there. But it's a film that feels a little bit repetitive with its storytelling and its jokes. The character is not exciting in the first place, but at least there is like some like moments that you can cheer on for the character at the end of the film. Mr. Peabody and Sherman, it's an okay film. There's a lot that happens in here. I know they try to go over a lot of historical moments in here, but with so much in here, I think that the historical figures that they do visit, the scenes feel so brief because they try to cram so much within it. And by cramming so much within it, it gives it a really quick pace. And that's not the best thing for this film, is that it's taken away from the development of Peabody and Sherman. Since there is so much going on, the story feels quick, the development for the characters feel quick. There's not much in between to tell a developing story because of everything that's happening within the film. It looks great, and it's got that classic feel for Peabody and Sherman, but I was a little bit disappointed with this film. I was looking forward to it though. How to Train Your Dragon 2, that's a great film. It's got a great, it's a great sequel, and really exploring the world and where they are at now. Hiccup is more of a confident character. Toothless is still got that really solid relationship. There's a lot more action. It feels bigger than the first film. Great sequel, great animation. Really love these characters in the world and how they explored it and what they're doing now. And everybody's more connected with the dragons. It's great. Penguins of Madagascar, I think, is probably the one I've watched the most out of this list. My wife and I saw it when we first started dating. That was our first date, actually, seen it in theaters, and we've seen it every December since it's been released. So 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. At least 7 times, and then a few times on Blu-ray as well. When we got it, we were still dating. But I like the penguins. Even if the story isn't the best thing ever, the penguins make it worth watching because, my God, they are hilarious. And all of the little references to other actors in the film, you catch on to it, and you start paying attention to it, and it becomes really funny. The villainous plot in here is absolutely ridiculous, and you saw it coming. It's not like a surprise by any means, but the penguins make this film worth watching. Next up, we got Home. That goes in the D category. Do not like any of the characters in here. It is silly beyond belief, and you got to see other films that are silly, but at least they got like fun characters and fun story. Home does not. Rihanna and Jim Parsons, 2 completely different characters in here that they voice, and it just becomes a weird and unfunny film. Since we're here in the D category, let's just knock out The Boss Baby. God, the potty humor, the animation that doesn't know what it wants to be, it's just bad. At least the sequel was a little bit better. Let's just talk about the sequel real quick. I know we're doing this out of order. I really like the sequel. It improved on it. It built on that relationship. These two in the film, the Boss Baby and his brother, really had no chance to grow as brothers. The second film, they were older and they went back to being younger, and they went back to that relationship, and over time they kind of drifted apart. This was a film to kind of get back to that, and I really liked that. There was humor in here that worked. I found it to be funny. There was less potty humor and more humor that I thought to be funny, and the characters were likable. I was honestly surprised with how much. I was honestly surprised with how much I liked Boss Baby Back in Business compared to the first film. All right, Kung Fu Panda 3. It's a great film. Personally, my favorite of the bunch, because you just see how much Po is loved by his father and his actual father, voiced by Bryan Cranston in the film. And everybody's just there to kind of love him and protect him, and he's still learning new things and being challenged and determined, and we see other pandas in here. It's got so many sweet moments, and the humor is still there. It's more of a personal film for Po in the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. Next up, we got Trolls. Trolls is good. I like Trolls. It's got some really colorful moments. The end music is great. Poppy and Branch, completely different trolls, but Anna Kendrick just goes all in with this movie and makes Poppy one of the most brightest character in Dreamworks. But it's got some really great music along the way that just kind of keeps the movie flowing and fun to watch. I know, like the end music as well, and the meaning all behind it. It's very colorful, very bright, and I just like looking at this film. Let's talk about the sequel since we're here. It's still a good film, but it's so much better than the first Trolls film. Branch and Poppy are a little bit distant within this film. That's disappointing, but there's so many other characters in here and so many other music genres that it feels like a completely different film. Captain Underpants. I've read all the books growing up. I really enjoyed Captain Underpants. I think it did capture the feel of the novels and all the different books. It's fun, it's zany, and great voice acting. The animation's great too. I think it brought forth like that style from the books within the movie. Just a fun film. I don't think it's the most memorable of the bunch. I think the humor worked for the movie and matching the books as well. Just an overall fun film. How to Train Your Dragon 3, that's a great film. Solid end to the trilogy, realizing that things are going to change and relationships may fall apart, but that's okay because the love is there. And exploring the hidden worlds, it does feel bigger than the first two films, more emotional than the first two films. It got a solid villain in here. and just feels very urgent, and I really love this film. One of the best animated trilogies of all time. Next up, we got Abominable. That's a good film. It's got some really good animation, and I love the growth of these characters within here. It's a fun film. Reminds me of that movie Smallfoot, but this was a lot better. I really liked Abominable. It's got a fun characters in here, great relationships. 3 more films. Taking a long time to do this. So many DreamWorks movies. The Croods New Age. That's a good film. I like the new characters that they brought in here. And kind of like that first film, see how they react to everything and the differences between the two families. And realizing that times are changing and we got to move on. And the dad, Nicolas Cage, kind of stuck in his ways. But realizing that this new family is in this new age. And so many characters in here, but I love seeing all of the families for the Croods and the new characters as well, kind of building relationships, even if they're different, and seeing the arguments as well. It's fun to watch. Spirit. Is this one called Spirit Untamed? I don't know. It wasn't as good as the first one. Very toned down. Where that first film was simple, beautiful, elegant, just awesome. This one just was trying to go for that Netflix vibe, that Netflix series. It's nowhere as heartwarming. It's just a really toned down film. It has much more of a story. That doesn't mean that the story's great. It's just really generic, really bare. Almost like this could have just been part of that Netflix series. Because the writing for it is just like I said, bare. And the animation's typical for DreamWorks, whereas that first film looked beautiful. This one just looks average. And last, Bad Guys. This is a great film. I actually really liked it. It's funny. It's quirky. It's got that great heist feel to it, and so much growth for Mr. Wolf as he's realizing he doesn't want to be a bad guy anymore. He wants to be a good guy, and he's afraid of what his friends will tell. He's afraid of what his friends will say. This is a film that has great development. It's got that good heist feel. The voice acting from Sam Rockwell, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, Anthony Ramos, they all fit the characters, and all of the characters are so likable and so enjoyable to watch. The Bad Guys really did impress me, and I love that animation style. It's the best looking film they have done, I would say, maybe since How to Train Your Dragon 3. It kind of brings the animation from Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, Mitchell's vs. the Machines. It's something different than they have done before, but it definitely does work. So there you go, all of the films on the tier list. Let's rank them now. That's the most daunting task at the end. We have the worst one being B movie, and then we'll have Home. I wrote it all down so I didn't forget. I have the list on Letterboxd. Next we have Shark Tale, and then Boss Baby. And then we'll go with Turbo, Monsters vs. Aliens, Peabody and Sherman, Spirit 2. Okay. Then we'll get Shrek 3, Simbad, Road to El Dorado, and then Rise of the Guardians, and then Shrek Forever After. Those are the C films. The B films, Flushed Away. Then we'll have Antz. Where's Antz? There's Antz. Trolls. Boss Baby Back in Business. We'll go with Spirit. Hold on. Croods. The first one. I like the second one a little more. Croods. Boss Baby, Croods. Megamind. Where's Megamind? Megamind. Madagascar 3. Right here. Come on. Madagascar 3. And then we'll go Captain Underpants. Then we'll go Over the Hedge. And then we will go Trolls World Tour. Then we'll go Abominable, Wallace and Gromit, Croods New Age, Chicken Run, Chicken Run, Chicken Run, Chicken Run, Chicken Run. Then Spirit, Madagascar 2, Penguins, Puss in Boots. Then we'll go Prince of Egypt, Bad Guys, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda 2, Kung Fu Panda 3, How to Train Your Dragon 2, over How to Train Your Dragon 3, How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek 2, Shrek. There you guys have it. The ranking for all Dreamworks films, with the best one being Shrek and the worst one being B Movie. There's some really good films along the way. They've done some really solid films. They got more of this good films, but these bad films, they're absolutely terrible. So there you guys have it, all Dreamworks animation films in the tier list. How would you rank them? Let me know in the comment section down below. What is your favorite one? What is your least favorite one? I don't know. I don't know if we'll do this again in September. This is a long video for Puss in Boots. Maybe I'll just, I don't know. We'll figure something out over the summer. But there you guys have it. All of the Dreamworks films in a tier list. Leave your ranking down below. My name is Just Watching Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.